She. Hello and welcome to a new edition of the Romanian Artcast. Today's guest is someone with a vast amount of experience in the realm of commercial art. A graduate of the Bucharest Architecture School, he has worked as a freelancer for companies such as Paizo, as a concept artist, as a matte painter, and right now as an art director for Ubisoft Bucharest, where he has developed the look of Assassin's Creed Origins alongside other heavy names in the industry such as Rafael Lacoste. Here to share from his wide experience, I am welcoming Cristian Chihaia, Ubisoft art director. Cristi,
Hello.
welcome to the Romanian Artcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. So it's the first edition of 2018. Happy New Year. How
Happy New Year.
was the last year to you?
It was good. It was good. It wasn't an amazing year by any measures. What made it amazing was finally launching Origins. That was something that we were and I was extremely excited about. But yeah, it was a good year.
Okay. Well, I would like to hear the story of how you got to where you are now, and I'd like to spend a bit more time on it. So let's
All
start
right.
with high school.
High school. All right. Since I was a kid, I thought that I was going to be an architect. Like I really wanted that. It was my first big passion connected to art in a way. And so I went to an architecture high school. It was an arts high school with an architecture class.
Hmm.
And that's where I learned how to draw a little bit and some stuff about perspective and stuff like that, some technical drawing. So that was my high school experience, basically.
Hmm. I'm hearing a lot of crackling right now. I
Hmm.
think it's from your connection, for the phone, maybe.
I hope not.
Um, okay. You started then the architecture, being a student at the Bucharest Architecture School. How was that?
You mean university or?
The university, sure.
Yeah, well, actually, I have to correct you on what you said earlier. I didn't graduate. I'm a double dropout, and I'm kind of, in a strange way, proud about it. Um, Basically, I did go to architecture university, and I studied there for about 2 years. But what happened was, in parallel, I had discovered concept art, and I thought that is exactly what I want to do. So I already kind of knew that I wanted to make it my career. I just didn't know how exactly. It was very, very fresh in Romania at the time, and there weren't that many people interested in it, or not too many job opportunities by any means. So what I did was, in parallel with architecture university for the first 2 years, I kept practicing concept art and just drawing stuff. And after 2 years, I took the decision that, you know what, I'm just gonna take a leap of faith and go forward with concept art. So that's when I dropped out of architecture, uh, and I moved to Bucharest. I moved to the capital, and I enrolled in my second university, which was product design. So I mentioned that I'm kind of a bit proud about it because I took a very mercenary approach to my education. Like I just went and I studied the things that I thought were necessary for concept art.
Like perspective and stuff like that?
Yeah, it was kind of like after architecture for 2 years, I thought, okay, I have a solid grasp on perspective, so I can move on to something else, and that's why I enrolled. Well, that and the pressure from my mom, I enrolled in product design, and that's where I learned some different stuff about marketing your work, doing some more complex projects, a bit of conceptual design and stuff like that. And I didn't finish that one either. So I dropped out after about 4 years because I just didn't have enough time anymore. And I was already working full time. I mean, I had been working full time for the entire 4 years of school. So
Would
I
you
thought,
recommend architecture school for someone that wants to work in game design?
if they're passionate about it, it's really down to what they want to do. If they're really into environments, then maybe, but I wouldn't finish it. So I'm a really, yeah, I mean, I'm a really bad person to ask this question to. I think architecture is a very difficult university, and it takes 6 years.
Hmm.
So if your end goal is doing concept art, then spending 6 years there is kind of defeating the purpose in a way. You might as well just go on and do architecture after you finish.
Awesome.
Um,
Uh,
yeah.
the people in the chat are telling that they can hear a lot of static noise from you.
Mm.
So I believe it's a good idea that we move to the computer, and I'll just put a photo of you, just so we
All
can
right.
hear you clear. Okay?
All right. Cool.
Call me back. Okay?
Sure.
All right. So we're going to wait for Cristi to call us back, so we do not hear any more static noise. Um, Now, Cristi has a pretty usual path to an art director. Most people that become art directors have usually had many different positions in their lives. And Cristi has been both a freelance illustrator, a 3D modeler, a matte painter, and now an art director. Alrighty.
Is this any better?
Yep, just share the screen so we can see your work.
Yeah, sure. I'll just look something up while we talk.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. So we were at the architecture school part of your.
Yeah.
You said that you dropped out after 2 years, and it was good. It was helpful for you to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was good. It's really helped me in terms of perspective, first and foremost. So it definitely played a major part in stuff that I like doing as well, and in the way that I approach some of my work. Later, I will show you some work where you can definitely see that background shining through.
All right. Would you recommend product design versus architecture for someone that wants to go into this field?
Again, it's really about what you're passionate about. For example, if you feel like products such as weapons or props or things like that make you excited, or that's what you want to pursue in concept art, then that's what you should follow in your education as well. I think at this point there's also quite a few gaming schools per se where you can learn about the actual art section of gaming. So that's something that we definitely had no business with in Romania that many years ago. So yeah, we kind of had to grab whatever relevant information we could from different schools.
You like to sketch buildings. Why don't you show that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, it's part of. I guess it's a reminiscence of school. So I'll show you my travel sketchbook. This is something that I actually wanted to talk about and definitely recommend to everybody, pursuing concept art, is try to keep that traditional approach and keep practicing on paper. It's an extra layer, and the mobility helps tremendously. Like just carrying a small book with you wherever you go. You never know what you could find or what could inspire you.
Hmm.
Um, this is uh, most of these photos are taken in airplanes. So usually on my flights, I have my own ritual, and this is a photo of my actual traveling ritual, where I'll ask for small wine and a coffee, and I'll draw some stuff, and I completely zone out and relax when I do that. And it makes my travel so much nicer.
Okay, so we were at the point of you at you in your story where you dropped out of school. What happened next?
Which one? The first one or the second one?
Well, the second one.
Right. Well, I just kept. I think we have to follow like parallel threads between education and work because they sort of intertwine in a way. When I moved to Bucharest, that's when I started working. I had my first job as a graphic designer
Hmm.
in a very small studio, and I was doing stuff like logos and branding and packaging design and stuff like that. And then after that, I moved to television, where I did a combination of graphic design and show design, and a bit about matte painting, working with a local film studio. So
Hmm.
at that point, um, after about 2.5 years, I think, in 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 television, I started working as an art director for this television. And
Were you still a student then?
yes, yeah, and it was around this time that I dropped out of school because there was just not enough time, and I thought, school was preparing me for this job, so I
Hmm.
just can't do it anymore. There's just no physical time.
What would you
Uh,
say qualified you for the job in as an art director at such a young age?
uh, it's it's nice that you say that. It's something that I geek about because I was 24. It was nothing qualifies you for that job at that age. Absolutely nothing. It was the most terrifying experience of my life, especially dealing with the pressure of television. It's a very cutthroat type of market, so it really brings out everything in you, the good and the bad. We called it a boot camp. That's where you learn how to do things as fast as you possibly can, and it's a fire and forget type of attitude that helped later, but at the time it was absolutely terrifying.
So you would say that you were a bit underqualified for this job.
I think so. In hindsight, I think so. Yeah, we didn't fail dramatically, and I think some of the work that we did, because just to clarify, I was not the only art director in the television. So we had about 4 or 5 guys on the same spot, and together as a team, I think we did some pretty good work. That some of it is still running today, and considering that was done in 2009, I think it's I'm kind of happy and sad at the same time that it's still running some
Awesome.
8 years
So
later.
you were in the fourth year, if I remember correctly, when
Yeah,
you
exactly. Yeah.
started working for ProTibet. How long were you with them?
I was with them for about 3.5 years. After and during this time, that's when I started going all out with concept art. It was around the time when I met some of the people in the chat that I can see. It was around the time that I started being active, and I was live streaming almost every night of the week, and Christmas and Easter and New Year's and everything. So around that time, I was working full time for the television station, and um, filling up the rest of my time with drawing and training to hopefully become a concept artist. and it was about 3 years of intense, hardcore work, like averaging maybe 4 to 5 hours of sleep every night.
Hmm.
And we had Skype calls with friends, learning together and developing and treating each other like crap for what we did. But it was some of the best times that I recall.
Well, you actually were part of the Crimson Daggers, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, yeah, at its very beginning. Yeah.
How was it? Most of us didn't catch the glory days of Crimson Daggers, and most of the people that were then actually became really well respected concept artists.
Um, for me, like I feel, I don't know, I feel kind of bad, taking too much credit for Crimson Daggers, because it was kickstarted by the time I got there, but still I caught the early days and onward. I'm really proud of what that group did, because one of the most important things that it promoted was free education. And that was something really big for me, since most of the education, if not all the education I got for concept art, was free and off the internet. And I thought, why not share that with everybody else? And it was a very hardcore group. I want to say that we were terrible at making friends, because the attitude was, just stop complaining about stuff. Don't make excuses. Don't don't cheat your way out. Don't look for shortcuts. Just put in the hours, put in the work, and then you're gonna be okay. And we're gonna help you as much as we can. So that was the attitude of the group, and it's true. Like most of the people that were active, if not all of them, are working professionals with pretty solid careers by this point.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what drew you to become a concept artist?
Well, I found a website called conceptart.org. I know this is gonna raise a lot of eyebrows. I found this website many eons ago. I was still in high school, actually, and it was just after it launched. I found it completely by accident. I was looking for architecture drawings, getting ready for university, and somehow stumbled upon it. And I found the work of people like Wesley Burt, like the old massive black gang, Wesley Burton, Koro, and Marko Djurdjevic. I don't know, just a bunch of rock stars like Andrew Jones and people like that, and they all had sketchbooks and stuff. And it was incredible to me that you can draw creatures. Like, my mind just exploded. You can draw like dragons and get paid for it. Like, that's an actual job. For me, for my small Eastern European brain, that was damaging. I just couldn't understand that. Yeah, it was one of the biggest culture shocks I've ever had in my life. I was realizing that you could actually do that and have a career off of it. So I decided, wow, you know what? I'm really interested in trying this out.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it was the same for me, except it was an interview from Alex Negre that showed me that it was possible
Nice.
to live off of that.
Was it a Crimson Daggers interview?
I don't know. It was quite a long time ago. Okay, so you started training with Crimson Daggers. When did you start actually getting commercial work?
Well, I started freelancing very early. It was something that I almost always did on the side. Uh, I got my first freelance commission in high school. Uh, Back in those days, oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying back in those days, but it's true. The world is moving fast. Back in that day, game modifications were very popular. It was a really cool thing to do. So everybody was doing it. This is before Steam Workshop, before anything like that. So the first gig I had was drawing some units for a Red Alert mod, uh, which sounds very, very old because it is. Uh, so that was the first thing I did, and then I kind of kept doing it. I did gigs starting from, working for free, working my way up to like $5, $10, $15, $20, $50, $100, and just stuff like that. I had the whole curve of freelancing from from the bottom of DeviantArt to whatever I can get my hands on.
Huh. So you really started from the bottom and now you're here.
Yeah, not there yet. No. Started from the bottom, not there yet. That's
Okay.
the bottom.
What next?
What do you mean?
So you started freelancing.
Oh, yeah,
Were you doing any jobs at the same time?
yeah, yeah. I mean, uh, it was freelance was on the side all the time, like almost every evening. I tried to fill up whenever I saw some hours that were not occupied by work. I saw space for more work.
Hmm.
So I took up freelance as much as I could, and kept doing that for about 10 years now, or more,
Mhm.
or maybe more. It was really always there, still is.
Wasn't there any time when you were freelancing exclusively?
Yeah, there was. So after about 3.5 years in television, I decided maybe it's time. Maybe I'm ready to at least get a junior position. I had very low expectations, but I thought, all right, it's time to see if it works out. So I found a well, I got recommended for a small outsourcing studio here in Bucharest called AMC, and they were doing work for a bunch of video games. And I, took the tests, I submitted my portfolio, had the interviews, and I got in. That was my first full-time concept art position, which I've kept for about a year or so, I think.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, how did you get to Ubisoft then?
Well, after working full time in the studio, I, as I mentioned before, I was freelancing on the side,
Mm-hmm.
and it came to a point where things just didn't add up. Like I wasn't really happy with the work I was doing in the studio. It was very sort of underwhelming and just really low impact stuff, and even lower than I could have previously imagined. So I was freelancing on the side, and the money that I was making in the evening after work hours was more than my salary full time. So I thought, well, if I can do that within less hours, then I'm just gonna give it more hours, and hopefully it's gonna be okay. So I quit the job, and I went full time freelancing, and it was terrible.
Why?
uh, it was really like, I don't blame anyone. I still don't think it was a bad decision. It was just a really unfortunate series of events where after I resigned from the job, within 3 or 4 weeks, I think, a month at most, like three major clients that I was working for backed out, and I was left with like no jobs. So that was, yeah, and in came a really difficult period of time where I was doing just about anything I could just to pay rent. So went from doing super okay to like doing really bad really fast. And then it got much better after a few months. I was well and fine, and then I met somebody from Ubisoft Bucharest at a dinner, at a friend's party, and we hit it off. We talked about stuff. He knew my work, and then eventually I went to Ubisoft.
What would you say is the hardest part of finding work?
as a freelancer.
Yes.
Um, I right now I'm not familiar with the freelance market very much because the the jobs that I get come from old clients or people that I've worked with in the past, people from TV or whatever, like old friends.
Hmm.
So I don't really know how like what it's like out there anymore. Um, but I would say it probably depends on your expectations in a way. Um, if like the price range that you're moving around or stuff like that, and also networking, I think, in my opinion, plays a crucial role in clients, in getting clients and getting work. I think if you're not online, if you're not visible for people, then they won't find you, they won't find your work, and it's much more difficult for you to find them than it is for them to find you if you have your work, posted everywhere.
Awesome. So, at that point, your career in Ubisoft started. What year was it?
It was almost 4 years ago, so that makes it 2013. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yes, I'm celebrating 4 years in March, which would make it, yeah, almost 4 years.
So, how was your career in Ubisoft, your time there?
Uh,
How would you describe it?
mm, it was again, it was really terrifying, I think. But then again, I don't know. Everything was terrifying for me at the time. It was a very interesting transition for me because I had worked in the only large company that I worked in prior was the television, and that was a very different type of company. And joining Ubisoft, I got to see something entirely different. And I don't know, I clicked with it. I liked it immediately. It was a complete joy for me to be there. I was really excited, really, really, really excited to be there. The people, like, there's people there that they're getting close to my age in experience, which is crazy. So uh, there's people that have been, doing video games since forever, since video games started. So it's really inspiring, and yeah, in the beginning, I found it to be very challenging and competitive, but it was something that I was used to from freelancing, and I had a blast.
How did you become an art director?
Oh, it's a long story. I think I don't know. uh, I had a I don't know. I had a strange path in Ubisoft. It was a very fast advance in a way. Uh, Maybe, yeah. But I think it had to do with the fact that I had sort of done that a bit before, and I kind of understood what it took to do that. And basically, after my first game in Ubisoft, which was Ghost Recon Wildlands, where I'd done tons of work. Uh, After that, I had the opportunity to move to Assassin's Creed Origins and do the art direction. But in the beginning, it was once again, I was at the point of being terrified because uh, there's definitely a large amount of responsibility and pressure that comes with the job.
Awesome. Well, I believe we can go on to your works, and we'll alternate between talking about your work and asking some other questions. Alright?
Sure. Yeah. The actually the image I have on my screen right now is tying into what we were talking about earlier about the impact that architecture school had on what I do. This is a piece of concept art from Assassin's Creed Origins that I did just on paper with a pen. Just felt it was so natural to do it that way, and it's similar to what eventually turned out.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we have a question.
Yep. Hello, I have a pretty basic questions and wanted to hear your opinion. What are the pros and cons of working freelance versus working in-house? Just a quick comparison.
Sure. um, in my opinion, freelance is freelance depends. I don't know how to say this. Freelance will tell you what kind of person you are. I think if you're doing full-time freelance, that is gonna define or at least show you what you're like. Because if, for example, if you're a slacker, if even if you're a semi-slacker, you're gonna have a very rough time in freelancing. If you're a hard worker and you have good communication skills and you know some people and you know some clients, then you're gonna have a great time. Um, so freelance is kind of this place where you find the truth in what your ability is, and um,
Mm-hmm.
working in house, and of course, freelance has the opportunity to have you manage your own time, which is a honey trap. I found that while I was freelancing, I was working way more than when I was just doing full-time job. Um, and then varying on how you manage, like it'll teach you so many things. That's kind of what I have to say about freelancing. It'll teach you how to manage your time, how to manage your money, how to manage people, how to manage just all aspects of your life, especially if you're self-supported while doing it and you have the impending bills that come in. And socially, it has the potential to make you a loner and like a very withdrawn person, in which case you need to seek out social contacts online and make sure you don't become too secluded. And working in house is different. It also depends where exactly you work in house. If it's a small place or a big place, the advantage is that you get to work with other people and get to see what they do, and you're not separated from other opinions and other points of view, and you'll get into arguments and you'll learn how to manage that type of situation, and you'll have to diffuse situations. It's completely different. So there's pros and cons, I think, in different ways, in both ways, and I would say experience both if you can, at least for a bit, and depending on how you are as a person, I think you'll be naturally drawn to one of them.
Mm-hmm. Another question is, I've watched you do 3D in a Hangout. Do you prefer 2D or 3D?
I love both, actually. 3D is let me show you some 3D. 3D is actually a more, I guess, more newfound passion. I started doing 3D more when I joined Ubisoft, because I had people there who were super nice and patient with me, and they helped me. And now it's definitely something that I use a lot, like a lot, and I love both. Really, it also depends on what exactly I have to do. So on the task at hand or what it's used for. If it's I don't know, a large scale scene or stuff like that, then sure, I might do a little block in or stuff. If it's a more complex or detailed vehicle, for example, then I'll put more effort into the 3D part. So it really depends.
Mm-hmm. I'm quite curious what software you prefer for 3D.
I prefer ZBrush. I love it. I just got used to working with it. Um, a large part of what I do is kit bash as well, it's somewhere in the middle between 2D and 3D, and kind of managing your own models and working with something else. That's something that I'd love to talk about. For example, is kid bashing. It's uh, like I love Legos, right? So working with kid bash is a lot like doing Lego, except you're doing it for free. Well, not for free because you're buying the kits, but still, while you're doing it, it turns out to be maybe even cheaper than Lego. But it's something that you can do, at your computer, and you have this giant set, and you can build your own parts as well, and you just grow this huge toy box. And
Hmm.
for me, it's just super exciting, and I love it. I love doing that. So it helps it helps concept artists a lot. I think this new method and this new approach. So definitely give it a shot. And obviously goes without saying, but still I have to say it. If you're using people's sets, if they're free, at least mention their names. If they're not free, then do your best to buy them and support the artists that make the sets.
Awesome. Damien asks, my professor once said that artists often develop depression. Did not explain why. Besides money, do you have any idea why it touches almost every artist?
I want to say it's maybe not even always about the money, because the money can be a problem when you're starting out, and then slowly it can fix itself as the years go by. So you can definitely get into the point where you're comfortable and you can support yourself. For me, it was such a big thing to find out that there's people who support their families and have children and a house and stuff, and they do that with art. It's one of the things that gave me courage to take this path. Um, but I think the topic of depression relies more on how we're built internally as artists. It's just so many things. I think art makes you vulnerable, and as soon as you share your work, that's you've opened up an emotional door, and it's people are have different levels of resistance to what comes back from sharing your work. Sometimes you'll get good responses, sometimes you'll get bad responses, uh, and it can hit you very hard, I think.
Awesome. Tiberio asks, what do you think is the most important thing to keep in mind when you are an art director?
One of the most important things. Oh, we're getting raided. It's raiders. Uh,
Nice.
sorry, can you repeat your question, please?
What do you think is the most important thing to keep in mind when you are an art director?
Your team. Yeah, maybe not the most important, but definitely one of the most important things is your team. Um, I have this quote sort of stuck in my mind that really put things into perspective when I became an art director. It was that so much more is about your team and what they are doing, and you're there to facilitate them to create amazing things. And not only that, but in a way, hopefully, you are responsible for their growth and their development as well. So it's a really important part of what you do. Another very important thing, in my opinion, is growing your mind as much as you can, and your references,
Visual library.
your visual library, and stuff like that. It's looking at what's new, keeping up with trends, seeking out information, watching documentaries, watching movies, watching everything, reading. It's really about growing your mind as much as you can, because the more you can expand on that, and the more you can keep up with that, the more you can help your team
Hmm.
deliver.
All right. Do you want to talk a bit about any of those pieces that came through?
The folder that I'm just going through now as we talk is something that I wanted to share with you guys. It's this is my chill out paintings section. It's something that I do when I want to relax. For example, if I have a rough day, or I'm not feeling good, or if I'm depressed, as somebody said, then I'll do these paintings where I hang on to either a song that I play on repeat for 2 hours,
Hmm.
or a quote that I like. It could be from somewhere, it could be something I made up, and then I make a painting inspired by that. uh, this piece, for example, is really straightforward. It's a Sia chandelier song, and it's just a quote from the lyrics, and it's a painting that, I don't know, describe what I was feeling at the moment. So
That's awesome. Where did you get the idea to do that?
the songs thing,
Yeah.
uh, I was doing it sort of anyway without being conscious about it, and then it became a thing. It just became a thing. I don't know. Now
Okay.
I do these. I call it. Most of them are like postcard sized. Uh, so this is the stuff that I usually gift people when I meet them.
That's cool. Diana Sherbonescu has a question. You mentioned you had a mercenary approach towards your art education. What would you say are the areas a concept artist needs to master versus any other type of artist?
Oh, um, once again, I would say it depends whether you know what you want to do within concept art, because concept art is a subspecies of art or design, depending on who you ask. And within concept art, there's more subspecies as well. There's different niches that you can follow, and it really just has to do with what you love
Hmm.
to draw the most. There's people I know who've been drawing characters since they were kids, and now they're doing it professionally and never cared about anything else, and that's what they do, and they do it amazingly. There's other people who do the same with environments or robots or cars or whatever it is. That can be a niche. uh, for me personally, I always had a generalistic approach to my learning and to my work as well. If there's if how to, if too much time passes without me drawing a certain subject, I'll take notice of it and do it. It's a conscious effort. It makes everything more difficult, and sometimes I hate it,
Hmm.
but it's definitely something that I try to do, is dip my toes in everything. That's why it's incredibly difficult for me to put together a portfolio, for example. So usually if somebody asks me for a portfolio, I'll ask them back like, what exactly do you need it for? Because out of these 1,000 paintings, there's, what do you want? Do you want cars? Do you want people? Like, what are you looking for? And then I'll just pick out what I think is relevant for them. Um, it's just something that I chose to do. It makes things more difficult because then it takes you more time, more years to get really good, if as opposed to spending all your time on just one thing, for example.
I would like to ask you about this image. If you hand painted everything, or if you used photos or kit bashed it.
Uh, no, I mean, this is a, I think it's a painting from it's a photo from Prague, I think, or Germany, maybe, I don't know. So no, there was a picture in this area of the image, and then I just expanded the canvas and went on my, because all of these paintings have, most of them have the same format, so I'll just follow that. So yeah, there is somewhere here a picture of a castle here,
Mhm.
but then everything else is just expanded.
Awesome. Tudor Bodanu asks, what do you look for in a portfolio? Probably as an art director.
Right. So we're talking about hiring, for example.
Yep.
Uh, a couple of things definitely pique my interest. One of them is diversity. I think it's important. It's sort of what I was mentioning earlier. I think it's important, and I'll give you a very simple metaphor for this. I think you should try at least once or twice or three times to paint stuff that you have no business with, or to draw stuff that you don't care about. Because, for example, if you if you only eat potatoes all your life, and then I ask you, hey man, what's your favorite food? You're gonna say potatoes. But if you go and you sample so many different dishes, then you might discover that your favorite food is something completely else. And then that's going to give you an idea of what you actually like the most. So you shouldn't shut yourself down from that experience and just try everything at least once.
So you look for
Except
that diversity, pretty much. You want to see if the person in question can do more than one thing.
Yes, that's one of the things that I look out for in portfolios. Another thing that I look out for is whether they've done any research in regarding game concept art. I know that it's difficult. I remember, being outside the industry and finding out stuff about what a concept artist actually does at work was difficult unless you knew somebody. Because most people would post their best work and everything looked super polished and super rendered and oh my god, everything looks amazing. But that's not necessarily game concept art. So I love to see production work in portfolios as well, like different variants of something, different iterations, even simple stuff like a spaceship, for example, but with 3 different colors or 3 different engines, or you know what I mean? Because that's a lot closer to what you would do in your job, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's also something I look out for. Yeah.
Awesome. Dragoș Timofte asks, what sparks your imagination? What do you do when you just don't know what to draw or sculpt?
I go through my. I either I go through my books. Either I get really smashed with my best friend, and we talk about all kinds of things. And usually I go home with ideas about what to do, or sometimes I just take a break. And I think that's something that took me so many years to learn, is just take a damn break. And it's really important. You can get burnt out very fast if you're putting too many hours in. You can, for example, I was telling you earlier about those years, those 3 years or so, where I was averaging, I guess, 18 hours of painting every day.
Yep.
And I thought it was great for me. I thought I was doing. Yeah, there's my best friend. That's Twiggy. Hey man, you heard me talking about him. So I thought that was good for me, and in a way it was. In a way it was horrible, because I was not taking my breaks. I developed hand problems, like wrist issues. I developed back problems. I developed eye problems. That's why I wear glasses now, and not taking my breaks really, in a way, helped me, mechanically, if you want. Like, that's one way to look at it. It helped my mechanical skill 1,000%, but my brain was really left behind because I wasn't feeding with information as much as I should have and taking my breaks. Mm-hmm. Now, to be honest, if I feel like I'm in a really bad spot, like I cannot, if I hate, doing stuff, or if I have a period like that, then I try to get out of the city as fast as I can.
So, basically, do you have any guidelines for when it would be beneficial for somebody to take a break, especially if they work as a freelancer?
if you're if you paint something and you find yourself in that moment where you're not looking at the picture anymore, but you're staring at one spot on your screen and you're painting the same shoulder pad for 2 hours, that's it. Just get up, you know, just close it, save it, close it, go do something else. Just try to, I encourage people to find hobbies that are connected or could develop your imagination, but they're just not drawing or painting. For example, one of the things that I used to love doing was Lego, like I told you, like
Hmm.
doing Lego techniques, or now I just, maybe play a board game. I mean, board games are, it's like hanging out and playing a game, but it's full of art. Like, without realizing it, you're feeding yourself with artwork. And or I go through my magic cards collection, or I go through my books, or I watch a movie or a series. I watch esports. Just whatever helps you disconnect, just do that.
All right. Tudor asks, how much of your time do you dedicate to getting inspiration from other artists, like browsing ArtStation or DeviantArt, for example?
I don't. Okay. I like browsing ArtStation, but not too much. Uh, hmm. Okay, I browse ArtStation, but I take a look at the front page, and then I go into the what's new section. Yeah, you should never let go. And so I look for what's new. I don't necessarily follow like the trending stuff. That doesn't interest me that much, unless if I want to look at trends, like current trends, then I'll go through that consciously. Otherwise, I just don't, and I just look at what people are posting, recently. And how much time do I spend there? Actually, I spend the most time I spend looking on art is on my phone on Pinterest. I love Pinterest, man. Pinterest is my place. Uh, it's changed everything for me. I have boards with stuff that I like, different topics, and usually I try to keep a mix because it's based on relevance, so you can actually control your homepage for Pinterest, basically, depending on the stuff you save. So I'll just be scrolling infinitely on my phone, watching thumbnails. Whenever I take a break or I, eat, or when I find the time, I scroll through that because it's such a diverse type of information that you can get there, and it's really what you make it. Like you can directly influence it.
Hmm.
And then I also check out Instagram. I followed a lot of super talented people there, um, and I check up with their work over there.
Right. Jules asks, do you do life drawing? And I believe this is a good segue to go back and talk a little bit more about your sketchbook.
I don't. I'm really that's something that I would love to do more and perhaps should do more. I don't do life drawing that much. I do. I mean, I draw buildings when I'm out, if that counts. For example, let's see. This is a life drawing from Frankfurt.
Hmm.
I was at a terrace, but to me, this is almost like taking a vacation selfie, though.
Huh.
Uh, I don't see it as life because I remember when I made this drawing. Now I recorded this entire moment in my mind and I can replay it. That's why I think you should carry a sketchbook with you all the time. Because I remember the table I was at. I remember the nice old gentleman that I actually took a selfie with, who served me beer and asked me where I'm from and stuff like that. So it's really a snapshot for me. I see it differently. I know it's a drawing, but I can see the colors and remember the noise and stuff. So it's really cool. This is also a live drawing from Frankfurt. It's this was, see, I have a different memory connected to this drawing. This drawing was the first time in my life that a building liked my drawing on Facebook. Because I put this up on Facebook and I tagged the building, and then the building liked it.
That's
So that
cool.
was, yeah, it was really funny.
Do you do any guidelines in pencil, for example, or do you just go
No,
direct?
not anymore. I don't actually use pencils anymore that much. Almost not at all. I almost exclusively draw in liners or ballpoint pen. It had something to do with my hand problems in the past, where I developed some problems with my left wrist because I'm left-handed. Because I used to press too hard on my pencils, and I couldn't shake that habit. So talking to the doctor at the time and explaining my problem, he gave me a series of exercises and stuff like that for my hand, and he also recommended that maybe I can change my tools. So I did that. That's why I don't use pencils that much anymore. It's really just liners because I don't need to press anymore. Like the lines are just there all the time,
Awesome.
which is depressing as hell, by the way, when you start, because if you're used to pencil and you switch to this, you're gonna have a horrible time.
Kim Jong-ji does that, and he's known for doing that.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
doing landscapes and stuff like that without any guidelines.
yeah. I love him. I love him. That's one of my dreams. It's one of my secret dreams. Well, not so secret anymore. One of my biggest dreams is actually meeting up with Kim Jong-gi and doing a wall together, like where I would do the building stuff and he would do his people, and it would be a crazy scene. I'd really love to do that one
That's
day.
awesome. I hope you do. I hope you do. And
Oh yeah,
seeing that you tend to go to the same art events that he goes, sometimes,
sometimes.
who knows? All right. I think this is a good point to talk a little bit about your influences, since you mentioned Kim Jong-gi.
Influences, you mean like favorite artists?
There you go. Yeah, artists that have molded your style. Let's say. You.
Uh, I'll just keep
Oh, you can.
running the slideshow or something here.
If you have a folder with inspiring artists, you can show us.
I don't actually.
Oh,
This is the yes, goodbye childhood. Uh, I used to have I was a freak amongst my friends because I had hundreds of folders of people I liked, and I would save those in my folders, and then I would never look at them ever again. So I stopped doing that completely. And like I said earlier, now I just check out what people do online. And I think there's maybe, if you ask me today, I'll give you 10, 20, or 50 names. If you ask me tomorrow, it's going to be some other 10, 20, or 50 names.
so there's no special artist that has a place
There,
in your heart that.
well, see, that's already a category. You know, there's people that I enjoy technically. There's people I enjoy in terms of technique. There's people I enjoy in terms of style, in terms of compositions, in terms of it, there's just so many ways you can look at a painting that you can find different things that you like about different artists. And I think it's actually really important, especially in this position as art director, to not look at just a few people and try to look at more people, uh, and keep an open mind in what art can look like, in my opinion.
Tell us a little bit about what we're seeing right now.
This is just some of the work I did for Ghost Recon Wildlands. It was a really awesome project to work on. I loved it.
Hmm.
So these are just all kinds of concept art, from more polished like this. This was an interior from a mansion to stuff like this. Since we were touching up on portfolios a bit earlier, this is the kind of thing that I would like to see, for example, in a portfolio, which tells me that the person kind of understands a bit about game production. There's stuff like this. So it really varies. Some of them are really fast and loose. Others are a bit more controlled. It depended on what was needed at the time.
Now, you gave really good advice that you need to do game art, not just good art. Oh, how?
If you're applying to a game job, just do.
Yep. Uh, how can one know what is good game art, especially if they've never worked in a studio? How can they find out?
Mm, buy art books. Look at art books. Look at art books from games. That's, I think, the easiest answer. Uh, there's so much stuff you can check out. There's some amazing books out there which showcase a large section of the the game's production cycle. So you can definitely check that out, for example. And what else? I think.
I
Again,
mean, to
yeah,
me
yeah.
at least, the art books seem to show only more polished illustrations, the things that really look good, not is not necessarily the nitty gritty
Mm.
stuff.
Maybe you need new books. For example, stuff that comes from Pixar. Usually, Pixar usually has great art books where they show sketches and variants and characters and stuff like that. So definitely check that out.
All right. Uh, okay. Jules asks, you used to draw characters, both male and female. Do you draw characters now?
Much less than before. Much less than before. Now it's more on a need basis. Unless I have a great idea or an idea that I think is great, then not that much. I still do my portraits. I love my portraits. I love doing that. It's one of those things that I like painting where I zone out and relax. But apart from that, no, not that much. I don't think I was ever a character person entirely. So it was mostly for clients.
Uh, Now you said you have been a matte painter. Tell us a little bit about what that implies, and if you have any work that you did from back then, please show us.
Mm, I don't think I have anything ready for you now. The work as a matte painter is close, but not close to. Well, you need to make a serious sacrifice and a serious decision when you do matte painting, because matte painting is called the invisible art for a reason. A successful matte painting is a matte painting that you don't know is a matte painting and you think is just a picture. That's a great matte painting. Uh, and there's obviously some specific technical stuff for matte paintings as well, like mapping, some mapping stuff, camera projection, and things like that. But the most important part is having super seamless, invisible work.
Okay. What were the things that caught you by surprise when you became an art director?
Uh, Got me by surprise.
You said that it was almost every job you had caught you a bit underprepared.
Uh, well, that's just because I enjoy saying, or I enjoy thinking that we're never too prepared. Um, Something that caught me by surprise. I don't know if anything caught me by surprise, to be honest.
Uh,
Maybe maybe not maybe not surprised is the word, no.
okay, well,
I
let's say when you became an art director for ProTibet, not for um, Ubisoft.
Oh, people listening to what I had to say,
Ah,
that was a that was a change. Um, yeah, and I think the extra pressure, at least the first time around in television, the extra pressure that I felt back then was the thing that caught me by surprise entirely. Is just the knowing that the decisions you take have a major impact that goes beyond you. That's, I think, is one of the biggest differences between, for example, working as a concept artist and working as an art director. Usually, when you're a concept artist, you work with an art director, and your decisions have impact on you only. And then, as an art director, your decisions have impact on your team, your project, or even more. So
Okay,
that's definitely a change.
how much of
Can
the
you, can
how
you excuse me for a second?
sure. Will you be gone for long?
No, just 10 seconds.
Okay. Now, the thing that I find very interesting about Christie's work is that when you're a beginner, especially, you may think that you may need to draw and paint everything, but his work is heavily referenced and uses a lot of photos or 3D. And one thing that some of us need to learn, especially if we want to go into this industry, is that we need to know some of these tools. Just not necessarily because there's no other way than to use them, but because in a studio environment, and I think Christy will say the same, things move extremely fast, and you can't really afford to do detailed renders like you would in illustration, for example. You there, Christy? Alright. Now, what can we do? We can show a little bit of his work from ArtStation while we wait for him to come back. Also, if you have other questions, you can post them in the chat, and we'll ask Christy when he comes back. Now, as some of you may know,
Back. Sorry.
okay, I was starting to show your ArtStation.
Sure.
Okay, I was saying that you use a lot of photos and textures and kit bashing and all that.
Yeah.
I said that this is because people need stuff very quickly in the studio environment. Would that
Yes.
be correct?
Yes.
So, what kind of skills would someone need if they want to become a concept artist? Skills that maybe they don't expect that they need to have.
Unexpected stuff. Mm,
Well, maybe some
Flexibil-
people don't expect to know ZBrush.
yes. Well, again, the 3D part is something that has grown in the past few years. It wasn't that prevalent before, but nowadays, yeah, it is becoming more of an industry standard for concept artists to know their way around 3D. The way I use 3D, for example, is it's never a clean mesh that you would actually use in the game. For example, it's just a messy stuff, but it's good for me to establish composition or scale or something that I might need in a specific moment.
Mhm.
And then the mesh itself is not that important. So
I think it would be helpful if we stopped on, if you choose one of the, if you go back a little bit, choose one of the pictures that you showed and tell us how it was used in the game.
yeah, sure.
Like the one with the donkey. I don't know how it was used in the game.
The one with the donkey. Well, this was a concept for an outpost in the mountains, and I don't know if it stayed this way exactly, but it's establishing the style of the buildings.
Mhm.
Things like textures or their state of decay, or materials that are used in that area. We had in Ghost Recon Wildlands, you have different, what we call biomes. It's different regions who have different vegetation and rock structures and stuff. So, for example, based on altitude, you're going to see some changes as you go further up. And this was on a plateau. It's pretty close to the highest altitude, so much less the information in the images, stuff like the much There's not that much thick foliage, thick vegetation. It's really kind of dry, and yeah, and the donkey is just a joke.
So basically, you needed to do this piece just to communicate to the 3D team what kind of vegetation and, I don't know, rock assets to use?
It's one of the things that establishes this the style, for example, of the area. It's an establishing shot, and this particular outpost, as an environment artist, you get different information from a painting like this. It's things to do with how you dress up the set, and again, textures and stuff like that.
Okay.
There's other shots, for example, since you asked about things used in the game, even though I'm pretty sure it changed, so this might not be the final form, but this, for example, is a concept from a larger mansion, and the story was actually, hang on a second, because I have this open for a reason, so we can talk easier on this. So here, for example, the story was that there was this old monastery, and it was taken over by a drug cartel. So one of the informations that needed to be clearly specified in this concept was the old section of the building, which you can see around here. So if you look from this section here, it's like old hacienda style of architecture. And then the story said that they took over this and then built an entire section attached to it, which was a more modern villa. So it was one of those tasks where I knew that I needed this type of overview perspective to make things clear for myself in the first place, and then for everybody else.
Yep. Looks like modern day Bucharest.
Yeah, pretty much. It's that eclectic. Well, actually, a lot of things were similar between Bolivia and Romania in terms of kitsch culture.
Yeah.
So from the same mansion, there's also this facade.
Do 3D artists actually use the facades that you construct?
Yeah, they do.
Cool.
Of course they do. And here there's some interiors from the same villa, and the person who owned the villa was this collector, and she loved kitsch, which was a really interesting sort of briefing, which meant she would have these really kitschy combinations of colors and stuff. Like, this was her own private museum, and she had these classical paintings on the ceiling combined with modern lighting and stuff that didn't make sense together, like the pool, for example, with the classical inserts over there and classical Greek scenes and stuff like that. So really stuff that shouldn't be together, but it is. That was part of the briefing and the flavor of this villa. So.
When I looked at the project, at what you did, I didn't get a feeling of classical beauty. And now I get why. Like, you did that kitschy vibe intentionally.
Yeah, I mean, it was part of the briefing. Really, it's a person who loved kitsch and loved collecting random stuff.
Okay.
There's so much gold. It's like super. Yeah.
Do you want to do the same thing with Assassin's Creed?
Sure. I have a couple of things here. Since we were talking earlier about architecture, this is, for example, it's one of the things that we had to do for Assassin's Creed Origins was this big hippodrome in Alexandria, and my approach to the building was trying to figure out what that would be. And on a project of this scale and magnitude, you have people that check facts. So if you're off, if you're historically inaccurate, they'll tell you, which is a really interesting, and it was really really cool for me to try and design this hippodrome. And I went I went for it in a very architecture university type of way. Really, I had this approach. I thought, you know what, it's a classic building, and maybe I should go the classic route with it. But obviously, there were ton of tons of supporting little drawings and overpaints that happen from when you start working on something until you reach the final. That's a I get asked quite often what's some of the bigger differences between working as a concept artist and working as an art director. And for me at least, it's suddenly my hundreds of concepts turned into hundreds of screenshots with arrows and writings on them. It's really, I think, hundreds of little notes and feedbacks that sort of bring the whole thing back together. And that goes for everything you see in this picture, for example. And it depends. Sometimes the artist that you work with will just nail it from the first time. Where I think this winged Sphinx, this Persian influenced Sphinx here, I think I only ever had one comment on it ever, and then it just went in. So sometimes you'll get that, sometimes you have to go through more iteration. Really depends on what you're doing. But your responsibility is to make sure that the entire image works together. So everything from the time of day that you choose to how dense, how opaque this dust needs to be, to how the ground texture should look, and how deep should the wheel of the chariot go into the sand, to whether this effects is looking the right way, or the flags and textures and everything that goes on in that image needs to have conscious decisions on it. So I think that's one of the most interesting things for me to do, and it's what I love about the job. The fact that you have to pay attention to all these little things, and at the same time zoom out as much as you can and make sure that the whole thing works together.
Cristi, you've been an illustrator, you've been a concept artist, you've been a matte painter, and an art director.
Graphic designer and a bartender.
There you go. Which one of these, except the bartender, do you prefer to do, and why? If we set the money aside.
Money has a very small influence for me personally. As long as I have my basic needs covered, and then some, I think I'm okay with that. It's not really about that. I really enjoy doing art direction, and also it would be maybe not impossible, but it would be destructive for me to stop painting as well. So those are two things that I have to do all the time. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question necessarily.
Well, thing is, as an art director, you draw less than as an illustrator, for example. That's why I was curious to know.
Yeah, it is true, but at the same time, which was it was difficult for me to adjust to in the beginning. But at the same time, the challenges and the rewards are different, and you just change. I suppose it's a good way to say it. Before, I would be very unhappy if I couldn't show. For example, you can see the biggest contrast, I think, is between Ghost Recon Wildlands and AC Origins, where in Wildlands I think I did maybe 350 concepts or something like that, 400 almost, and with Origins it was way less, but a lot more of different things. And it's definitely a change, but it's something that you get accustomed to, and I don't know.
Let's talk a little bit about variation. Oftentimes when I see people posting their concept art, they do a lot of variation on the same character. Can you talk a little
Right.
bit about that?
Uh, Usually that's done to show your client, whoever it is, because your art director can be your client, for example. You can think of it that way as well. And you're a client as well yourself. So when you do variation, it's usually just to show different options. It could be something like maybe you do the first one because this is what your art director specifically asked for, or you could do maybe this one because you had an idea, and then maybe you could do another one which is completely different from the others. I don't know, or maybe you had some feedback on the first, and your art director told you, maybe try out different, I don't know, tarps or different jewelry or things like that. It could be driven by feedback, for example, when you do variation.
Okay, what about this one?
This exactly. This is one. Yeah, this is a different building, different activity that we had to do. It's the Siren Arena in AC Origins, and it was really, really interesting to work on. It has a large number of different encounters, so we changed the set dressing for different fights, and all of them have separate thematics. This one is a Greek influence, for example, and then others will have a. This one was a. It's a throwback because arenas were a huge spectacle, and they used big props, and people didn't have movies and stuff, so the arena was a major entertainment factor in that time. So it had to be bigger than life, and we've toyed around with all these different thematics. This is the like a Persian thematic, for example, in the arena with its particular assets and stuff like that. And this was a more barbaric one, for example.
Now, most of what you have showed here are 3D renders. What was your
There's screenshots from the game. Yeah.
so what was your contribution to this? Because I don't think you modeled it. You art directed
No.
it, but more specifically, what did
Right.
you do?
Let me just go back to one of them, for example. So what happens is, first of all, you will decide or collaborate on deciding the actual thematic of a particular fight. In this case, it's the Persian one, for example. Then you collaborate with the level designers and the game designers, and you try to make sure that you find a good compromise between gameplay areas, the places that the characters will move and play through, and a good composition. So part of what you contribute is setting up these compositions to send the feeling that you want them to send, like majestic, imposing, adorned, and even the assets that go into these compositions are still some things that you have to pitch in on and say this doesn't fit because maybe it's too detailed or it has too little detail for what we want to say. So it's everything from collaborating on their placement to how they work together, how they look, if the textures look right, if there's enough lighting, if the time of day is perfect, if the mood is good, if the effects are there and they look nice, if you want more specific even shadows on the ground, for example. I'm a major dork on shadow play on the ground. It's something that I really love bringing into what we do. So establishing these specific moments in the day where you fight these fights and making sure that this hour that you chose works best for the type of fight that you want to have there, and then having interesting patterns and all that stuff. So in a way, you're sort of involved, or you should be involved in almost everything that goes on with the scene. And considering that in the beginning it's an empty field and then it turns into something uh, as the project moves along, I think it's really interesting.
It is. It sure is. We
And
have.
obviously, sorry, sorry to interrupt. And obviously, you definitely contribute with concept art as well. Even if you might be working with a concept artist or more concept artists, for example, um, but you definitely do your own share of concept art. This was a very early. I think this was one of the first images I painted for the project, and it was just to sort of set up the size of the thing and imagine the mood and everything. Something, because I think it needs to be specified here. Something that's a big part of what you do as well is you'll be making these documents. We call them art bibles, and for example, on a game like like Assassin's Creed Origins, um, you have a person like Rafael Lacoste, who's the franchise art director. So he's the mastermind of the whole production, right? So he'll be doing these art bibles that cover the the super big vision of the game, and then you take from that, and depending on what you have to do, you'll be making some yourself for the team, and that includes references and paintings and um, links to movies, or even something simple like a YouTube clip and things like that, so that when an artist that works on the project, even if he's tasked with modeling a statue or something from the game, when he has access to that, he's going to understand the vision of the game, the needs, the visual direction of the game, the desired level of detail and contrast and stuff like that.
Yep.
Does that answer the question?
Sure. One thing that the average consumer does not know or understand is how serious the artists are with these entertainment projects. And I haven't seen an art bible for a game, but I've seen art bibles for Disney movies such as Lilo and Stitch and Mulan. And it was extremely detailed. Like they had a lot of references for example, Chinese paintings and how they would do the trees and how they do the rocks or water or how the lines should flow, how the anatomy should be.
It's very similar to that. Yes, it's basically a theoretically, if you would take this document and turn off your internet connection, then you would have enough information to be able to work on your stuff
Okay.
and have it fit in the game.
Another question from the chat is, what is your main focus as an art director? What is the one thing that you always have in mind, no matter the project?
The gamer,
Hmm.
the the gamer is your consumer. That's your client. In this case, when you're doing video games, so it has to work for him. It has to work for the gamer. I think it's really important. It's one of the mantras of working in games is uh, making sure that what you're doing is good for the consumer. And something that I care about is, and it's really something that comes with experience, and you can be better or worse at it. But for example, knowing when you know the information is correct and you take a decision and you stick to it, and knowing when the information that people around you provide is better than your information, and then changing your decision to the correct one is also something that is important. And it comes with time. I think it's a very soft skill in a way.
hmm I would like to ask you, what were some unique things that working on AC Origins has taught you?
Ooh, ton ton of things. Uh, where do I even start? For example, working with Raphael was a blessing. Um, the man is amazing. He knows his he knows his stuff. He has an insane amount of experience when it comes to doing work for games and not only Assassin's Creed but specifically. And it was really crucial. It was crucial help for me to collaborate with him. Having, since it was the first major project that I was on the position for, and collaborating with him, and definitely taught me a lot.
One thing that you wanted to show, but we haven't showed yet, even though we've looked at more recent art, is your oldies.
My oldies.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, I picked out some oldies from our station, I think, earlier, because this is a pretty new computer, so I don't have everything on here.
In the meantime, Cristi Roman asks, "Hi guys, would you recommend, Cristi, would you recommend going to university today to learn these skills, or try to get private courses and work your way like that?"
Again, I'm trying to really dodge education questions because it depends on the person, I think.
Well, Cristi Roman, the person that asked the question has been a guest on this show, and haven't gone to university. They've learned it on their own. So
right. Well, I think it depends on you and as a person in a way, and how determined you are to stick to your guns and to your schedule. For example, what school gives you is a learning environment. That's one. Group, that's two, and then assignments and deadlines. That's three. I think those are, in my opinion, those are the most important things that you get from going to school. The other information, aside from maybe some specific things that you might learn from specific teachers, I think most things you can learn online. But those other things that you can get from school are stuff that you can't get from learning by yourself, like working in a team, for example, or having strict deadlines. Maybe you can teach yourself to respect your deadlines, but that's something else.
Yep. Let's talk a little bit about these pieces.
Oh, okay.
For example, the laser guy.
Oh yeah. Okay. So laser guy was the first time I used the pen tool. This was a piece done only because I was practicing the technique, and I still use that technique today. I think that's why I have it here. It was a really good landmark for me, learning to move away from lasso tool and into the good age of pen tool.
All right.
You were asking earlier, I think, about Pathfinder. I have some of the work I did for them here. I know we were talking about this before edition. So, some character work for Pathfinder.
Now, do you think the work that you did then would be work that they would hire you for now?
Hard to say. I don't know. I don't think so, actually. I don't think so. I think the market has changed and evolved quite a lot, and something that maybe worked then doesn't work so much anymore, or maybe the trends are different or stuff like that. Maybe. I couldn't really say. I don't know. I will have to ask my art director from Pathfinder if they would hire me today with these. I don't know.
True. I mean, these are decent, but I think that today's standards are much higher than what they were 7 years ago, let's say.
That's one thing, and the second thing is I was never great at characters. Like by any stretch of the imagination. So this was, I think, as I don't know, but you've given me a great idea for a conversation to have with my art director from Pathfinder. I'll message her and I'll ask her about these.
That would be
Say, hey,
cool.
would you grab me again today with these, or you know?
I mean, you know, if you look at, for example, Magic the Gathering cards from like 1996 and compare them to the Magic cards today,
Well,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah, but I mean, maybe a shorter time span though. 'Cause 96 was
yeah, I was just giving an
even
example.
the
Like,
first tablets, I think. Not even.
what do you think will be the result of the ever higher standards for illustration and art in general?
Uh, we used to talk about this a few years ago, and I think the consensus was that that the market will get to hyper realism and then crash. That was sort of what people had in mind when we used to talk about it, about how the market evolves, because it kept getting more and more and more realistic. Boom, 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 boom. And in terms of painting, I mean, not games, not movies, so just painting.
Hmm.
And everybody seemed to think that it's gonna get to a point where everything is gonna just look real, and then it's just gonna crash. But I think in reality, there will always be niches for people who do different things or have different treatment or different techniques. I don't think that's ever going to be a problem.
But you do think that there will be a crash in the illustration market?
Mm, no, I don't think that anymore because we've passed that point already. Where, for example, if you think of Applebot,
Yep.
like the Applebot cards are, most of them are super realistic, and that didn't crash the market. It's just a niche. Uh, there's always going to be niches for different things, I think, and as long as there is demand, there's going to be supply. I really love seeing, watching concept artists who keep their approach in the work that they do, regardless of how um, high profile the project is or what the expectations are. If the work is quality, then I love looking at it, and it doesn't matter if it hits a trend or not. Uh, for example, if you think about concept art from games like I don't know, Destiny, or Assassin's Creed, or um, what else? Like stuff from Bungie, from Halo. The, those teams of concept artists do incredible work, and they have each individually have their own style, and it works. If it works for the game, then it works, and if it's good work, then it doesn't matter that much um, how it's done, as long as it serves the purpose for the game.
Awesome. Would you say that there was an event without which your life might have took a different turn?
An event, uh, maybe, maybe I would say, yeah, maybe I would say the first GNOME on DVD I saw, definitely. Yeah, it definitely hit me super hard.
Which one was it?
It was Scott Robertson,
Yeah.
and he was rendering a train with, I think, charcoal powder. This is really old. I mean, it's one of the first no ones ever made, I think.
I think
And
I've seen that one, and Scott was fat and had a goatee, and he looked totally different from how he looks today.
yeah, I don't remember, but I remember he was using like cardboard cutouts and stuff, and these really fine um, charcoal pencils, which at the time I didn't even know existed. Like I didn't know you can have charcoal inside of a wooden pencil. Anyway, and that was definitely something that influenced and it hit me very hard to see that. um, and I don't know. There was a series of events, I think, smaller or larger events.
Sure. The fact that you found out that you can make a living by drawing monsters and dragons.
That's one. That was one of the first moments, learning about the fact that the industry exists at all.
I've put down a question from before, and I forgot to ask you. You said that you were working way more when you started freelancing than before. Why was that?
Oh, because I was making less money, and
Hmm.
I had to do more work in time. Uh, and also, I had that mentality that, well, maybe it's a Romanian mentality or Eastern European mentality or however you want to call it, where um, I had this constant fear that, maybe I can't make rent next month. So if I had any free time, then I would just get one more client. You know what I mean? Just to
Yeah,
be safe.
like you were hoarding money pretty much.
Yeah, and hoarding work. And that's why I had very little time off. And like I crashed a couple of times, had mental, well, not mental breakdowns, but like burnouts, like some severe burnouts along the way. Because instead of enjoying that free time, I was just okay. Let's get one more client. I have 4 days that are empty in a month. I need to do something with those days and get some more work, which was a terrible idea anyway because it dropped the quality of all the work. You know,
Hmm.
it made everything. Most of my work from that period of time is rushed because of this.
Yeah, for some reason, most people say that their best work is their personal work, and I believe that part of that is because it's not rushed.
Yeah, yeah, it's a possibility definitely. Well, personal work is personal work. You're always gonna, unless you're punishing yourself or studying, then you're usually gonna work on the stuff that you love. So it's gonna be better just because of that. And if you're lucky and you get that in your job as well, then well, bingo. You know.
Was there was there another folder that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think this is most of the stuff that I have here at least.
Oh, okay.
Uh, like I said, it's a pretty fresh computer
Oh,
already.
okay. Well, let's just go through some questions quickly, and then we'll end the interview if there's nothing more. Oh, we
Yeah.
have another one from the chat. Is your personal work entirely different from what you work on professionally?
Right now, yes. It wasn't always the case. Uh, right now, what I do at home is, hmm, maybe this is an interesting topic, I think. Um, right now, what I do at work versus at home is the they couldn't be more different. They're like 180 degrees. I don't know. They're two different sides of a spectrum. For example, um, when I would when I was working on Origins at home, I was drawing sci-fi. So in a way, it works for me personally to. I think it's good for me. I think it's healthy to switch it up. That's we've talked about this earlier. Like switching it up is a good thing in my opinion. So, and I think it's also good to maybe not do the same thing at home, but it depends on the person. I personally enjoy doing different things at home, and my personal work follows a very organic pattern. Like I get interests in certain topics, and then I'll explore those at home, or I have some ongoing long-term projects at home that sometimes go back to, or I do something else, or you know.
Hmm. Okay, well, on that line, what would be your biggest artistic dream?
Artistic dream.
Yep.
Besides the wall with Kim Jong-gi.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, you said you had projects when you go back home from work.
Yes, yeah. One of the dreams is publishing at least a book that never seems to end. And I don't know. I don't look at it that way necessarily. I don't make huge dreams, I think. But yeah, it's definitely something that I want to do is, publish at least a book, if not more. And
Graphic novel?
yeah, it's a graphic novel. It's I have some of the work is actually, we can see it.
Oh, let's see it.
It's actually on my station. Let me just get there real fast.
Yep, I'd like to do one too, but I gotta learn inking techniques and stuff like that. Yep.
Nice. Yeah, so I have this book project that I've been working on forever, on and off, whenever I found time or disposition for it. And it's a graphic novel coming from the history of Romania, if you want. It's ancient Dacia combined with um, fantasy and stuff. So.
I don't know why, but a lot of us people from Eastern Europe really want to do something that has to do with our mythology, like The Witcher or Hara Pulp Continues. Or
Well, I think we should. I think we definitely should, because it's an underdeveloped topic in entertainment by far.
It is.
Untapped source. So yeah, these are some of the shots from the book, or it's more of concept art for the book, if that makes sense.
They're beautiful.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Don't ask me when it's out. I don't know. And I know my friend Spiridon is always asking me to finish it already. So yeah.
Oh, maybe by the time you're 40, you're going to have your first book.
Yeah, I actually think that it's closer to the truth than anything else. Yeah. We were talking about early about personal work, and this is something that I found funny. Like in my personal work, I like the most boring things you can imagine. Like painting a bobcat was more fun than it should have been. You know what I mean?
I don't.
Yeah, and that's why I get a bit cringy when I talk about my personal work, because nowadays at least it's just so doesn't have to do with anything, like anything. But yeah, maybe that'll become a book. The boring book of boring topics.
Of trucks and bobcats and
Yeah, exactly.
all kinds of vehicles.
Yeah, pretty much.
But they look pretty good. I mean, it shows that you really like doing them. Otherwise, you wouldn't put that kind of effort.
Which I don't know what says about me. Like, for example, this is a sci-fi, like a futuristic aircraft tug. It's one of those things that drags the airplane on the runway, and yeah.
Well, you would be the perfect student for Feng Zhu, because he makes his pupils do like boring stuff, not tanks and helicopters. Like do a mining vehicle, do something that tugs an airplane.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Yeah. So my personal work topics are not cool by any means, but Who knows? Maybe they will become cool.
Sure they will.
Maybe I'm foreseeing an incoming trend. Who knows? Maybe suddenly everybody's gonna do. If people start doing like luggage carriers and tractors, then I'm calling dibs on it.
Okay, let's do some quick questions right now.
Yeah.
Who would you be most grateful to for getting where you are now?
Most grateful to my mom.
How come?
Well, my mom was a single parent. Our dad, Jesus, my dad, kind of left us when I was younger, so which turned my regular happy life into a fail storm as a child. So I think she played a huge part in making sure that I stay on the right path and stay away from bad stuff. So definitely.
Awesome. Good. What qualities does one need to possess to become an art director?
Curiosity, I think, is a good one. Curiosity, just the willingness to learn all the time and expand your universe. Like, you should have no limits. You should try looking at stuff that you hate. I mean, not even just break any pattern of what you liked to do before, and look at as much stuff as possible and educate yourself as well as you possibly can.
Do you think developing a good taste in art is also part of it?
I think it's about developing the appropriate taste in art for the task at hand. If that's a convoluted answer, but I think it's
a little bit. You can say, how does one go about building his or her appropriate taste in art?
It really depends, because what is appropriate, appropriateness comes from either personal affinity or from a briefing. So
True. I mean, in the 19th century, let's say, you would study casts and old Roman and Greek statues, and that was supposed to develop your taste.
And round butts.
Yep.
Round baby butts. I don't know if that's appropriate right now, for example, anymore. So,
Yeah, so that's why I'm asking.
I think just there's things that have to do with what you will be dealing with in your daily work. That's the stuff that you need to develop, I think, which is not, not in the least. You need to be communicative, and you need to play well with others. You need to be able to work with your team, and you need to have sometimes you need to have a cold blood to take a hard decision. That's also a thing, being decisive when it gets down to it.
Okay, right now at Ubisoft, are there any things that only you can do or that you do best in the studio?
Right. Sorry again. I lost it. Yeah.
Right now, are there any things that only you can do or that you do best in the studio? And I'm asking this question because as an art director, you kind of have to know to do a little bit of everything.
Sure. I really would like to not reply to that question.
Oh, okay.
Aside from maybe the one thing, maybe I draw buildings very well, but apart from that, yeah, no. I mean, it's maybe there's definitely some things that I can do. There's definitely things that other people do better than me, and that's a natural balance, I think. And I think it should stay in balance.
Sure, I mean, it wasn't to disparage your colleagues, it was just to see if you have any specialization.
I think maybe when it's hands down architecture, maybe I have an edge due to the education and just the interest in it, maybe.
Cool. What media would you like to explore more but lack the time?
Mm, sculpture.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
How come?
I did it in high school and didn't do it since, and I loved it
Why
back then.
not? Why aren't you doing it?
As your question stated, lacking the time.
Oh, that's
But
true.
I would love to do that. Who knows? Maybe someday. I'd love to grab a ton of super scalpy and some little rakes and stuff, and do like centaurs or mythological creatures or stuff like that. I would love that.
You can actually make money off that if you do like anime figures.
Yeah, but that's not something that I would do.
Yeah, I thought so.
I think I would mostly do creatures.
Since we are in the first week of 2018, what are your plans for this year?
Oh, getting back to the roots a bit. Uh, this year I plan on painting and drawing a lot more than last year. Uh, that was the one of the resolutions, I guess, that I made to myself, was spending more time on the craft, as specifically. Something else is just I wanna. There's a couple of places that I wanna go to, things like that, like vacation or events and stuff. But we'll see how it pans out. Apart from that, really just buckle up and paint.
What would be some online courses you would recommend, or resources in general?
Mm. I think there's been uh, if you asked me these questions 2 years ago, I would have said Gumroad.
Hmm.
Now I think it's becoming more difficult to discern between the good ones and the bad ones. I think there's a ton of Gumroads that are great, so that's something to definitely check out. It really opened up the possibility for just any artist to share what he does, and I find that fascinating. I think it's what one of the things that was lacking from the older models of education online. Um, or if you have the financial possibility for it, I think taking up a class like CGMA, like one of the CGMA classes, is a good thing. Working with a strong mentor and doing assignments and getting feedback, I think that can be really great.
Are there
That's
any?
actually
Yep.
that's, I'm sorry. That's actually something that I was planning on doing myself, even if just for a second opinion on what I do, and I think there's no point in time where you're done learning. So I was actually checking out some of the classes myself.
Hmm. Are there any titles that spring to mind when you think about Gumroads?
Mm. Not necessarily, no, because I don't know. It depends on what you want to learn or what you want to do. It's like we mentioned this. I think if you're doing characters, you're gonna find good ones for characters or environments or stuff like that. Hmm. I don't know.
Okay. Um, what is your favorite game and film, especially from an artistic art director perspective?
Game and film. Oh, it's a tough question. That's gonna take another 2 hours. Um, One of my favorite films to watch and rewatch is, for example, Blade Runner, and the old one, and the new one's pretty decent as well. Uh, Blade Runner, Space Odyssey, 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Mhm.
And in terms of games that I enjoy by style, games like Dishonored, which had a beautiful direction. Mm, I try to, even if I don't get the chance to play through them, at least I usually watch playthroughs, for example. I, you know, Uncharted was an insane series in terms of art. Destiny looked great. Uh, there's definitely a bunch of games in there that look amazing. And there's also, stuff from the beaten path, like off the path, which I enjoy quite a lot. Games like Limbo, for example, or Flower, Bastion, Transistor. Games with a strong direction attract me usually, which have these powerful, powerful imagery. In any way, it could be pixelated or it doesn't matter.
When do you get time to play games? Since you work full time and then you do some freelancing on the side.
I make time for it now. That's the difference from before. I try to make time now to do that as well, to just chill out and play. But I play the most. Usually, the games I play to relax are really boring.
Would you say that there are any things that you would have done differently if you were to start again?
Oh, uh, mm,
Like say you just
like
finished high school.
like meeting yourself, like meeting yourself in the past and kind of what you tell yourself. I don't know.
Oh, like you have your experience from the 2018 Cristi that is put into the 18-year-old's body. What would they do differently?
They wouldn't go to school at all. If I knew then what I knew now, if I even had like 2 or 3 websites from today back then, I don't think I would go to university at all. Which is a terrible thing, but I don't think I would have. I think I would have stayed home and painted, maybe.
That's it?
Um, I think so. Maybe at some points in my life, I would have said you need to take it easy on your body and like on your mind. At other points, I would have said you need to not take it easy. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a rough question.
Well, you're kind of a special case because you worked hard ever since you were a kid. For example, if I were to be younger again, I would tell myself to work harder and not slack as much.
Well, I think sometimes I thought, I was slacking, and then I wasn't.
Oh.
And because I thought I was slacking, I would do more. And like I told you before, doing more turned into a problem at some point.
True, but I personally never worked 16-hour days, and I don't think I could do it.
Well, I don't recommend it. I think knowing now what I knowing what I know now, I don't recommend it. At least not like that. Do you know about the 24-hour live stream marathon?
No.
A few years ago, I was alone on Christmas, so I had nothing to do. So I thought, hey, why not, try out a world record. So I made a live stream on Christmas, like from the 24th to the 25th, and the bet or goal was to actually draw non-stop for 24 hours, and that's what I did, and I busted my hand.
God damn.
We made it through. I mean, it was really, and I thought nobody was gonna be there because it was Christmas, but it was really surprising to see how many people had nothing to do on Christmas, so they just hung out. It was great. Well, I think we had like, I don't know, we had a lot of people there, but yeah, we did that, and that was stupid. Really.
Well, you're never alone on the internet, even on Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. Apparently, yeah.
Okay, I want to give you the final word, of course, and to ask you what advice would you have for the people looking at us right now for their careers?
Um, Multiple advices, I think. Uh, one of the things that I think it's very important for people to know is that that thing that I mentioned earlier about trying out different things until you find the one that you're absolutely certain you love doing the most and sticking to it. Something else is to be as social as you possibly can and try meeting people as much as you can. We had this debate about Facebook a few years ago, or maybe 2, 3 years ago, because now it's just there. I know Facebook is a terrible platform right now, but in the past, people used to say that, oh, it's a really bad platform because it's just pictures of cats, you know. And what I did with my Facebook was I just added artists and allowed artists in until I reached like 5,000 and then some followers, and so my Facebook feed was only art, and then the people that were there were artists, so you could talk to people, you know, you could look at what they did. It was such a good thing to see in the morning, you know, when you woke up you would see new work from people, and socializing that way was an incredible experience and incredibly helpful. Like I feel like crap to say it. I've said this before in different interviews, but it is true. Because of socializing and networking and talking to people, I actually like never applied to a job just out of the blue, like by sending, you know, a portfolio. Like I always talked to somebody from there, or you know, they got to me, or you know what I mean. And that's just because I used or I tried keeping in contact with people, and I think it's incredibly important to do that for anyone. Just make friends, and you know, be nice. Don't be a douchebag. Try to help people when you can. Uh, as long as you help people, most of them will remember that, and you know, it's all gonna come together. So that's, you know, don't be a douchebag. It's a great advice, I think, if you're looking to get into the industry. And then there's all the other things that, you know, most people will tell you, like keep an eye out for what people are doing, how the industry is moving. Try to find the insider info all the time. Look at concept art. Look at games. You know, even if you're playing games, just try to look at them as you play them, instead of just playing through. Like, try to look at what you're, or observe what you're seeing. You know, maybe take a screenshot or two. Ask yourself some questions about it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, when it comes down to portfolios and stuff, that's something that you learn how to tailor in time. In the beginning, if you're just breaking into the industry, then your top 10 pieces, that's going to be your portfolio. I think for most people it's usually the same. Whatever you have best at that time, that's going to be your portfolio. But keep it with a bit of variety, show a bit of range. People like seeing that. I know I definitely like seeing range in people's portfolios. Take some harsh decisions. If something's really bad in your portfolio, just take it out, even if you like it. If people tell you it's really bad, just take it out. It's better to have a higher overall quality than having some pieces that break the flow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I can cram in, cram in like mountains of advice. I don't know. Play games, go out, try to travel cheap if you can afford it. You know, just travel by train, go to places, draw outside. You know, look at the sun, take photos of the sky, take photos of things that you find interesting, frame the photos in an interesting way.
I find it interesting that you recommend traveling. How does that help you become a better artist?
Um, it would be a longer conversation, I think.
If you can
There's
put it shortly.
I'll try. There's things that happen to my brain when I visit a different country, because if you're an artist, you observe more than the average person. So it's super refreshing for me to visit a different country, because as soon as I get there, everything is different. Like for some people, it's gonna be some stuff that's different, like people like stuff they notice, like cars or signage or stuff like that. But for you as an artist, it's like even you notice like the doors are wider, or there's different color scheme for the streets, or different textures. Different people wear different clothes, or maybe they wear the same clothes or similar clothes, but they have different compositions on them, which are more specific to that area that you don't see at home. Or the color of the sky is different because of your geographic position. And there's so many things that happen, I think, to me, that happen when I travel, and when I actually open my eyes and look and like try to take it in. Everything is different. Everything from the fonts, like the fonts on stuff, to brands, to shapes, to people, colors, sounds, smells. Everything is different. And I think allowing yourself to take all that stuff in is really refreshing. Like it snaps you out of your regular norm. And I do think it makes you a bit better. First of all, because you're training yourself to observe this stuff, and then the more you see, the more stuff you'll have in your mind, and ultimately that's where you pull out information from. It's your mind. So
Mm-hmm.
does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. Definitely. And it ties in nicely with what you said about carrying a sketchbook with you, so you can observe all that stuff and actually draw it.
Yeah, or at least if you can't do that, or maybe you have a phobia of drawing outside, or just take photos. But don't take those crappy photos that everyone takes. Take conscious photos. Think about framing for paintings
Hmm.
when you take even travel photos.
Okay. Since you brought it up, in your advice section, I would like to ask you, what do you think the best way to promote yourself and network today is?
I would like to say I'm very sorry for the current generation that forums are gone. Uh, Forums were amazing. So, like, I know some people are probably not even gonna ever experience a forum, which to me is crazy. Uh, because they were a place where everybody posted work and everybody had their own kind of thread. And I know my oldest thread is now 2004, now 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow! So that if you go to page 1, you'll see my drawings from 13 years ago, which were my the beginning,
Huh.
and having people there that gave you advice, or you you would check out their stuff and they would check out your stuff, and it was much more engaging than showcase websites. Right now, I think you need to keep in touch with whatever is working now. You know, our station, um, Pinterest, Instagram, Tumblr. I don't know if Tumblr still works. I don't know. I guess it does, but at least for some niches, I know it does.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just keep in touch with what's working now, I would say, and just something that has nothing to do with anything else but Google. Just try to put your work up in as many places as possible. That's just going to help Google find your work easier. Uh,
Okay. And
when
networking?
I
Yeah.
have sorry, just to finish this, I have a funny story about this, because when I started painting, if you googled my name, you would find on the images section, the first results were this guy with the same name that was a male stripper, and he was like a super buff guy, um, and that was what you found if you searched for me. And it took me, I think, about a year and a half to 2 years to. I think I kicked him like later. Now he's on page 60. I don't know. I don't care. But like in the beginning, I had to fight him over relevance in search results. If that makes sense. So you get that by posting on.
There
on
was
more,
a guy
more
called
posts.
Cristian Chihaia that was a stripper.
Yeah, it was a male stripper model. Yeah,
Oh man, was he
male model.
Romanian?
Well, I would suppose. I think he was. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and the networking.
Networking, yeah. If whenever you get the opportunity, go to events. I can't stress this enough.
I mean, I
Because
hear that a lot, but do you
Mhm.
do you ever find that people find work, or I don't know?
Don't think about that when you go to an event. Uh, okay, so think about it this way: if you go to an event that's a week long, for example, right, and it's from morning to evening, it's presentations, and lectures, and from the evening until the late night, it's drinking.
Okay.
Right. And then same thing second day and the whole week, right? When you watch all the presentations, you're gonna find maybe 20 things that are amazing, or maybe 10 things, or 2 things, or 1 thing that is blowing your mind, which is enough to pay for the ticket on its own, I think, right? Because other stuff maybe you will find in tutorials or Gumroads or whatever, but maybe sometimes somebody says something that clicks, or it hits you really hard, like a hardcore info. Um, and then there's all the socializing part, the networking that you mentioned. When you go to workshops, it's like as soon as the lectures are done, because maybe you don't want to miss out on that, uh, and you go outside, you've got 150 to 200 people that are just like you. Always carry cards with you, like contact cards. Do a little print with one of your pieces on one side, and then on the back side, just like your Skype or your website or your email address, something that people will find you by, and give those to everybody there. And you'll find that when you come back home, you'll have a huge, man, I wish I could show you my my contacts box. I have this huge box full of like business cards from people from workshops. And then you get back home and try to hang out while you're there. Have a drink with the people, talk to them, show them your work. You'll see so much sharing of work, of artwork when you're there. Like everybody pulls out their tablet or their phone or their prints, and you swap with someone and you take a look and then you talk about it. And that's, in my opinion, that's one of the things that really makes a good event, is how well they allow people to socialize. And yeah, we were talking earlier about this, and I told you this is what I loved about IFCC, and I encouraged you to go, as the sort of intimate space where everything takes place and everybody's there. And when everybody is there, it becomes intimate in a way. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, no, events are different. And I will also say, though, events are what you make them, in a way. Like, go there and talk to people, be open, show them your work, and exchange contacts. And then what you'll find is that when you come back home, you're gonna message some people on Facebook, and then they're gonna reply, and you're gonna maybe hang out or talk on Skype or work together or
Hmm.
just
True. Now a lot of people, and I have thought so in the past, that you go to events with the hope of finding a job. But if you
Uh,
are very mercenary and hawkish with that, as you said, that's not the best way to go about it.
well, yes and no. I mean, there are events that there's definitely recruiters at events. I think most events have spaces for recruiters, where you can go sit down and show them your portfolio and get a an interview or an opportunity. Very rarely, just want to debunk that. I think it's extremely like 0.1% that you get a job instantly. That's really don't think about. But at least you might get an interview over Skype, or they might look at your work, or you might just get some good feedback for your work, which is good, from somebody who actually hires people. And that's actually really good feedback to get, by the way. When you sit down and you show your work, and the other person is a recruiter from a company and they know what they need, they're going to give you some feedback, and I think that's good for your portfolio. And apart from that, usually there's scouts that don't necessarily make their presence known, but they swarm around the crowds and they take a look at what people show, and they might grab you for a second and talk to you. So yeah, there's definitely job opportunities. There's job opportunities that you might find there that you'll actually use maybe in 2 or 3 years, 4 years, or who knows when. You never know.
Awesome. Cristi, we're almost at 2 hours and 15 minutes. Do you have any final advice, final words for our listeners?
Final advice. Don't forget to have fun when you work. Put in the hours, do the work, try to be consistent about the effort that you put in your work. But I would say do not forget to have fun. It's dangerous. It's really dangerous.
Ooh. Oh, and on that note, we are ending our show. Cristi, thank
Right?
you a lot for being a part of the Romanian Artcast. It was a pleasure working with you, um, interviewing you. Um, I also want to thank everybody that looked at us, listened to us, for all the questions that you guys asked. In the descriptions, you can find links where you can follow me and Cristi. You can also find an email address where you can write me if you want to participate to a future edition of the Romanian Artcast, or if you know somebody that would be a good guest. Also subscribe so you can be up to date with everything. And we will see each other in 2 weeks. I don't know right now who is going to be my guest for the next show, but keep in mind that next week we're not going to do a show. We'll do it in 2 weeks. All right?
All right. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you for watching.